What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and before we go any further, just stop whatever you're doing right now, pull up your phone or open up another tab, and get your tickets to watch Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Of course, keep the video playing though. Come on, I need some watch time. But yes, this movie is absolutely amazing, and I'm going to tell you why. So first things first, let me give you a little bit of information about the movie, just in general. Then I'll go over my pros, the things I liked about it, followed by my cons, the things I didn't like so much, and then finally let you know whether or not I recommend you go to see this movie in theaters, which I already said to go buy your tickets, so I guess that part's spoiled. But either way, let's talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Now, before we get started, I should probably clarify, I have played plenty of Dungeons & Dragons in my time. I am a big fan of the genre as a whole. I've played it. I've DM'd games. I watch all kinds of Dungeons & Dragons shows, including, of course, Critical Role, which everybody knows of. So to say that I'm invested in the lore in general, I would say is an understatement. Now, granted, I'm not the all-knowing expert of everything D&D. There are definitely people out there that know way more than I do, but I am, in fact, a fan, and I have played the game. So just starting off with that so you know where I'm coming from. Now, a little bit about the movie. The movie is written and directed by two Jonathans. There's Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, whose names you may not be super familiar with, but they both actually directed a movie called Game Night that came out a couple of years ago that was actually really good. In addition to that, they also wrote on Spider-Man Homecoming with, of course, the director of Spider-Man Homecoming, who was a writer as well. So they've got some decent credits to their name, but this is really what I would consider to be their first big break on the scene as a director with a very, very high budget film. The movie is set to come out on March 31st, so I did get to see it a little bit early, although I guess there were some people who got to see it even earlier than me, which, you know, congrats to them. I wish I was that cool. But one thing to consider is that when a studio is willing to show their movie in advance at screenings and for people to review, that is generally a good sign. It's when they don't let you watch or review the movie until the day it is released that you really have to be concerned, because clearly then they're trying to hide something. But with this movie, it really feels like they're just saying, please watch it. They want everybody to see it and share how good it is. Now, if you haven't seen the trailers, the movie stars Chris Pine, who honestly is becoming one of my favorite Chris's. He's definitely up there. You also have Michelle Rodriguez, Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis, Hugh Grant is in this movie, as well as, I think it's pronounced Regé-Jean Page. If I've got that wrong, my bad. It looks like Reggie, but it's not. I know that for sure. And as far as a quick plot summary is concerned, Chris Pine, who plays a thief, joins up with a few of his friends, played by everybody that I mentioned before, as they go on an adventure to recover a lost relic. There, they run into some problems with some very dangerous wizards, and you end up getting kind of a traditional fantasy adventure of heroes going on a quest, not unlike what you would get out of many D&D games themselves. So let's go ahead and get started with the pros, the things I like about the movie. I have a few bullet points written down over here, so I'll just go through them one by one and let you know generally what I thought about the movie. The first thing I have written down here is the writing. The writing, specifically when it comes to the dialogue, is fantastic. A lot of times when you're making a comedy that has multiple characters in it, I find that poor writers will have all of the characters kind of sound the same. In fact, I say poor writers, but really, it's incredibly difficult to write multiple characters that are very different when you yourself are just one person with one perspective. But the Johns, or the Jonathans, or whatever these guys want to be called, the two Jonathans that directed this movie and wrote it, do such a good job of giving each character their own unique personality and their own unique personality traits and quirks, and making them funny, but in their own specific way. Yes, the overall brand of humor is similar across the board, but they all have their unique little quirks. And that's something that really stood out to me right from the beginning. In addition to the writing, there are some amazing action sequences throughout the entire movie. If you're a diehard D&D fan like me, you're probably going to be calling out some of the spells as they use them. But even if you're not, if you've never played D&D before and you don't know anything about any of it, I think you're still really going to enjoy all of the spells being slung everywhere and some of the fight scenes. It's really well shot, and the special effects they use for some of the magic looks fantastic. They also do a really good job of putting across just the vibe of playing D&D with your friends. There's one particular scene in the movie that I'm not going to spoil at all, but it reminds me a lot. If you've ever played D&D, you've probably run into one of these situations where your party is trying to get into a building and they're using every ability they have. They're casting spells, they're breaking lockpicks, trying to get into the door. They're sneaking around and trying to steal keys from guards. And then after 4 hours, they finally get in, only to find out that there was an unlocked side door that they could have just gone in the whole time. And this movie has scenes that are so reminiscent of that, of just your party doing the most ridiculous, over-the-top things to accomplish a goal, and then being like, oh, you could have just done that the whole time, actually. And when that hits, it is so funny. Also, each character fills a specific cast within D&D. If you're familiar with how D&D works, you have wizards and clerics and rogues and barbarians and all these different classes. And in the movie, they all have their own class, but what I appreciate is that they play them a little loosey-goosey. It has all the spirit of D&D, but it doesn't get bogged down in all the rules and technicalities. So if you're actually, according to the rulebook, you can only use that spell once per long rest type of person. You've been warned. The world building and just the scenery is also top notch. There are definitely a lot of practical sets and stages that they use in this movie, and they shoot a lot on location. And then, of course, they kind of implement CG elements in there. So you'll get a mountainside that actually exists in real life, but then they'll CG in kind of a castle on the mountainside, that kind of thing. And it looks absolutely beautiful the way they do it. You know, one thing I look for in a fantasy movie, especially, is after watching it, do I find myself craving to be back in that world and to just explore the world itself? Not necessarily for the characters, but the actual environments. And after watching this movie, absolutely. It is gorgeous. It's so well fleshed out. They implement a lot of the kind of locations that you may be familiar with if you play D&D or play any of the kind of D&D based games, video games that is. So they have those specific locations, which are great when you hear of them, but the world itself is just so beautiful. It's so interesting, and there are so many different unique places. I just want to go back there. Finally, as far as the pros are concerned, you know, I talk about the comedy, I talk about the action. There's also some significant heartfelt emotion in this movie. There's a particular scene which, to be fair, I did see it coming, but even then, when it hit, I got teary-eyed. I looked over, my girlfriend and her friend were both having tissues out because they were getting teary-eyed as well. So it's not just all fun and games. There are some real emotional moments in the movie as well, which is great. Okay, so those are a lot of the pros, a lot of the things I really liked about the movie. Let's get into the cons. And honestly, there's maybe two. One in particular is there were a couple of moments in the movie where the characters needed to accomplish a particular task, and then something becomes available to help them accomplish that task. Now, that, of course, is not unheard of. That's how you get the plot moving along, right? I need to get from point A to point B, and then I have a car that helps me get from point A to point B. The problem with me was in the way that they presented it. It felt a little sudden, and it was like one of those situations where it's like, oh my gosh, we could really use this. It just so happens I have that, you know? So if I'm getting real nitpicky, that I guess would be a negative, but it didn't really bother me much. It was just something I noticed. And truly, aside from that, the only other negative is I want more, and they didn't give me 12 hours of content in this one movie. No, but seriously, this movie, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, is incredible. I tweeted about it after I left the theater, and I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I truly think leaving the theater after watching this movie, the way I felt, I haven't felt that way since I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once in theaters. Yes, I've seen good movies since then, between then and now, but there hasn't been another movie that I've left buzzing about, that as the movie ended, I just felt so amazed by it. As we're walking out to the car, we're going back and forth, talking about our favorite scenes and reciting funny moments and lines from the movie and speculating on the characters and what was going on. This movie, plain and simple, brought me so much joy. So much so that as we get to my summary and my conclusion here, I absolutely must demand that you see this movie in theaters. This movie is incredible. This movie is why you go to the theater, so that you can sit in a room with a giant screen and a crazy surround sound system, surrounded by a bunch of other nerds, and laugh and shout and just have a great time watching an incredible spectacle on the screen. So yes, definitely watch this movie in theaters, and you can absolutely bet I will be buying this movie when it comes out on Blu-ray. But of course, All of this is just my thoughts. I'm just some random loser on the internet. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've seen Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, did you enjoy it as much as I did? Did you have more issues with it? I know you may have. I heard some people say that they thought it was maybe a little bit too long. I didn't think so. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, real quick, if you want to support me and my little channel here, the only real way I'm making any money on YouTube right now is through my Amazon affiliate link, which is in the description box below. So if you plan on buying anything on Amazon today, if you go through that link, it doesn't cost you anything extra and it just gives me a little kickback. Otherwise, if you want to see more movie reviews, trailer reactions, ranking videos, all that good stuff, make sure you subscribe. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.